All right, so we are back with part 2 of my interview with Leah Remillet. You can find part 1 over at streamlined.fm/460. In that episode, we talked about work-life balance. In this episode, it's a much more casual conversation where we kind of just talk about what it's like being a solopreneur mom versus being a solopreneur with dad. We exchange parenting notes and things like that. Really enjoyed this. So again, you can find all of the show notes for this whole 2-part experience over at streamlined.fm/460. Moving into kind of generally parenting as a solopreneur, we were talking before we hit record about the expectations societally. I think people expect moms to be perfect, and dads, I can tell you from experience, the bar is so low that just being around is good enough. And I experienced this immediately. Like, my daughter had been born 10 hours earlier. I'm changing her diaper in the hospital. And the nurses come in and they're like, wow, a dad changing a diaper. We never see that. And I'm like, how do you never see that? They're like, oh, usually it's the mom. And I'm like, the one who just like gave birth and is like lying in bed. This is literally the only thing I could do for my kid right now. Like, literally, I can't feed her, right? I can't skin to skin was just being introduced to dads at the time, but I felt weird. Like hanging out with my shirt off in a hospital room. So I'm like, this is like the only thing, right? Is change the kid's diaper. So I learned immediately, like, the bar is so low for dads. I guess the question I want to like keep it open-ended a little bit, but like, what are some of the things you've noticed, like, when you talk about like trying to find that balance of being a mom and being a business owner? Like, or how has it changed? Here's a better question, right? Because you started in the late aughts. We've been through a lot as a society, I'll say, since then. How has the expectation or understanding changed at all? Because I went from like single white guy to married with kid white guy over that time. Like, a lot for me has changed, really. So has it changed? How has it changed for you?
So, I could take this in so many directions, but I'll start by saying, yes, there is this pressure, and I've often wondered how much of it is societal and how much of it is self-induced. And I think, if I'm being completely honest, it is both, right? Like, I've put on my own pressure of, I don't want them to think I can't do it all. I want them to think that I can make cookies from scratch, even though I am genuinely the worst baker on the planet, right? Like, I want them to think I can do all these things. For years, I kind of hid that I had a business to certain people within my community, right? Like, there's something everybody expects. Oh, what does your husband do? And I can't even tell you how many times I've gotten the question. I mean, I could not count the amount of times I've gotten a question when maybe somebody's looking at, I don't know, something we have, something we're doing. Maybe they're like, oh, what does your husband do? And how much I want to say, I did that, thank you. Right? Like, there are these expectations. And it's funny because, okay, in one way, there's this part of me that wants to prove that I did it. In this other way, I'm not mentioning to the schools, during the time when I was volunteering, that like, oh yeah, I actually like fully work, right? The rest of the time, because I wanted to just seem really available and all the other moms. And I was actually having this conversation with two of my girlfriends. We have a little Marco Polo where the three of us talk, and we met each other 15 years ago, all speaking at the same conference. We were all speakers, and we've just stayed friends the whole time. And we were talking about how one of the girls said, she goes, I don't know about you guys. She goes, but in all of my circles of girlfriends, all the places, she's moved 3 or 4 times. I've moved multiple times throughout these periods. She's like, I have always been the only full-time working mom in my group. And I was like, wow, actually, me too. I've always been the only one who works full time. But on top of that, I do it from home. So it's a little bit hard for people to grasp and understand, right? Like they're like, I know you work, but like you don't go to an office like we're all
like,
used
do you
to.
work?
Right? And so it's been very interesting trying to navigate all that and navigate my feelings around it. The thing I've always wanted the most is like to know I'm a really, really good mom. Like that has mattered so much to me. It's something that it was just, I had to get that right. Not that I'm perfect by any stretch, but like I had to get that right. And so often that felt in competition with like owning a business. Like, oh, you work outside the home? Well, technically in, but you know what I mean. And right. And like these feelings, and you don't look at a man and think that. You automatically are like, of course, what do you do? And so all of these things have been very interesting to work through all these years. But there's definitely this feeling of, you and I were joking. If you bring the kids to school and drop them off, they're like, you are amazing. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. And, mismatched socks. That's so cute. Dad was trying. If I bring them to school, mismatched socks or anything else, they're like, what, you couldn't get it together in time today? Like, what's happening with you? Pull yourself together, woman. Right? Like, there is a very real difference. I remember, and I think this is a personal thing, but I really had some weird feelings around when I was bringing treats to the class that they were store-bought. Like, I felt like, no, you're supposed to like make them yourself. Again, I've already mentioned I'm terrible at baking and I didn't have time, especially not time to fail and have to make them again.
Right.
So I ended up deciding that my solution was like really, really high-end bakeries. Like, fine, if I have to buy it, I'm going to make sure I wow them by being like, oh, those are so fancy. Those are gorgeous. And I just wow them on that side. And I look at that, I'm like, that was all me. That was my own insecurities, my own feelings, but that's how I compensated for it. So yeah, hopefully that kind of helps a little bit as we're talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really cool to hear that. Cause like, again, from our side, my wife she works full time. She's a nurse. Like we have pretty flexible schedules because she makes the schedule and she does 3 12-hour shifts. So like she has more days off during the week than a normal like 9 to 5er does. But she puts that same pressure on herself, right? Because they'll be like full on stay at home moms who have like the crazy birthday tree with like and she's like, I want to do that. I'm like, we both work full time and we have 3 kids. We just got a dog. And so like we're doing our best. And if people are like judging us for that, then like they either don't remember or they're just like not in the thick of it the way we are.
And then I felt the same way. Yeah. I wanted that Pinterest party. I wanted the Pinterest presentation of everything. And I think if I'm being really honest, while I was worried about others judging me, I was judging myself the worst, right? Mm-hmm. Like I was the one who wanted that Pinterest presentation that I got to share because somehow in my mind, it validated me as a mom, even though who the heck cares, right? That's not the point. The point is actually time. It's actually how present I am when I'm with my kids, right? Like how you said, when your daughter's like, Daddy, I don't want you on your phone. And you're like, fine, go hide it. That means way more to her, you being fully present with her, than how beautifully you can present her after school snack, right? That was really my thing, but it is so true. There's expectations, whether they're coming from society, we're building them up ourselves. I mean, the other thing you and I talked about before we were recording that I think is so important I just want to mention is that as a working mom, it did not remove any of the other responsibilities from me. I was still expected. And I'm saying this societally, like my husband would try to help, but like it still fell on me what was going to be for dinner, if the house was clean, that the kids' projects were done and ready to be delivered to school, that we'd made the Valentine's Day box, and that I had the little Valentine's ready or whatever it was. Like that was still all on me, on top of being a business owner, on top of being part of our income or even at points our sole income, right? Like I never was able to shift those. And I don't think I don't think there's really any moms that can. I think we're getting so much better. I think even in, these 15 years that I've had a business, we've come so far as a society of realizing like these equal parts. But I really think there's something sad. You've shared multiple times, like the bar is set so low for men. And I think we've taken a lot from men by doing that to you guys, like acting like you're not capable or we can't expect much from you. Like, we're supposed to do all of it and just look over at you and be like, do you mind babysitting your own children tonight? Right. Or whatever.
Yes. Right. Well, that's so funny you say that. Cause like I mentioned at some point during an interview, like, oh yeah, my wife is working. I've got the kids tonight. And she said, thank you for not saying babysit your kids. And I'm like, what an insane thing to like be ready to hear.
Yes. I can't tell you how often I've heard someone say, I'm babysitting the kids tonight. I'm sorry, you're not babysitting when they're your children.
No.
That's you're being a parent. That's not a babysitter.
Yes, that is table stakes. Spending time with your children is table stakes.
Yes.
So like, yeah, and on the other side, right, I'm the president of the Home and School Association for my school. It's me and part-time working moms. Okay. One's at full stay at home. The treasurer is a guy, I stereotypically, I would say. And then all of the homeroom parents are moms, right? Like I was like homeroom parents, say homeroom parents, and then all moms signed up. And I remember our first meeting, like talking about something and how I was like missing the Yankee game for that. And they're like, wow, good for like my husband would never do that or whatever. And I'm like, okay, like cool. Like I can literally get the score update on my watch. Like this is important to me and I want to be present and I know it's like extra work, but, like you're right. I mean, the expectations thing is so interesting. I know we've gone over. I literally told you we weren't going to take the whole time, and now we're like slightly over time. But I do want to touch on something you said because I am guilty of this too. Even when my wife is at work, I text her and I'm like, "What am I making for dinner tonight?" Like, because like she like I told you, I'm not allowed to shop.
Yep.
So she does the shopping, and I'm like, does she have a plan? I don't want to make chicken something. And then her be like, oh, I was saving that for Saturday.
I needed that. That was for tomorrow's dinner or whatever.
Yeah,
totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so usually she'll be like, oh, there's ground beef or something. So, I'll still make the dinner, but I still every day at like 1 p.m. I'm like, what am I making for, like, you tell me, chef, what am I making for dinner tonight?
But oh my gosh, but I love that you're saying that. Can I just tell you, like for every man listening, and maybe it's not even that they're going to make dinner, right? Like, so here's what I ended up deciding. Ultimately, I was like, okay, this has to stop. I can't do everything. So here's my philosophy. My philosophy is I can be it all, but I cannot do it all. Meaning I can be epic mom, epic wife, epic business owner, great in my health, but I can't do every single thing, right? So that's where we kind of get either delegation or outsourcing. So I have a house cleaner, I have groceries delivered to my doorstep, and I delegate cooking. Now, your kids are a little young, but they're getting there to where I am going to highly encourage you that as your kids start getting older, I would say 8 is a great starting point. You start doing something like meal kits. There's so many out there. So you just find whichever one works for you. You let them pick what the dinner's going to be, and then that's their night to cook. So I had 3 kids. We got 3 meals a week. They're in charge of that dinner. So, a lot of it's done. They got to have the buy-in of what it's going to be. And in the early years, I'm the chef and they're the sous chef. But as they get older, it eventually replaces to they're the chef, I'm the sous chef. And then towards the end, they're doing it all by themselves. And they're learning how to cook all these different things, right? So that was 3 nights a week. Then 1 night a week was my husband. And I had to get over that, like, at the beginning, I wanted him to cook. Well, I have to cook, so he should have to cook. And then I was like, why, Leah? What's happening here, right? And I got over that, and then I'm like, no, the whole point is just that I don't want to cook. So if he brings home takeout, great. So to every man listening, like, you can just say, hey, 1 night a week, I don't want you to have to cook. I'm bringing home takeout. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, and if you're a cook, great, do that. But it was like, I don't care if he brings home something. Like, I just don't want to have to worry about that night. So that then became 4 nights a week that I didn't need to be worrying about dinner. So that only left me to, well, actually technically 2, because we have Fridays, our Fend for Yourself night. So it's literally like, everybody just go into the fridge, you find whatever you want. And you can do this when your kids are really little. And you just got to be okay with it. Let them eat cereal. Let them eat, like, great, I'm going to have chips and Jell-O. Okay, fine. That's what you get to have.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And they would love that too. My kids are still in like the I want to help stage, right? So like,
yes.
But it's in like the more, I think your husband's a doctor, right? Maybe he's heard the quote of like, show me an intern and I'll show you someone. And if they only double my work, I'll kiss their feet. I think that's like the saying, right?
Yes.
Show me an intern who only doubles my work and I'll kiss their feet.
That's 100%. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it's so easy to say and it's so hard to do. Because in the beginning, it is going to be more work for you. And this is one of those things where you have to look long-term. And the long-term is there's 2 incredible things. Number 1 is that you're teaching them self-reliance. You are teaching them life skills that are going to make them more confident as they grow up. And I can tell you now today, having 2 kids out of the house at university, and they're each, started in dorms. So like I have one that's in a dorm of, there's 6 of them right now. And she has girls in her dorm room who have no idea how to cook. They had no idea how to do laundry. And there is enough newness when you're going away to school to not have to combat that with like, oh my gosh, I feel like an idiot. I don't know how to make chicken. I don't know how to, right? So there's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is the long-term benefit of, for years and years, 3 nights a week, I didn't have to touch anything. And I would just like come out and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're having bulgogi bowls. I'm so excited. This is delicious. Right. And one of the kids had made it. So yes, it's so true that short term, it's a little painful, but long term, it's so worth that effort. And that's whatever we're trying to train them to do, whether it's, how to properly clean a bathroom or cook dinner or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, there was a kid in my freshman year dorm building whose mom would come once a week and do his laundry. Wow. And I was like, man, like have some self-respect.
Yeah.
Give me a break. You don't got to separate everything, right? Like, I don't do laundry the right way, but I at least I do my own laundry.
But in all honesty, you don't really have to. So, I will tell everybody, and this is part of like being a working mom and untangling that what I think I'm supposed to do and that guilt of like, oh, like, but they're so busy. Things are so hard. And then it was like, wait, so am I. Like, I'm so busy too. Why am I discounting that? So all of my kids did their own laundry. They were expected that they cook 1 night a week. They had major chores, like not just little ones. It was like, okay, you're cleaning, a section of the house and you're doing it the right way. And yes, did I have to deal with like all kinds of complaining and excuses and not doing it the right way and, all those things? Absolutely. But now that I am on that other side, I'm so grateful. And I'll tell you, you're sharing the side of being in a dorm and watching someone not know how to do these things. And I'll share from the side of hearing a bunch of moms speaking and laughing and joking together about like, oh my gosh, my kid's not going to have any idea how to do laundry, how to cook, how to figure this stuff out. And I'm like, that's actually not funny. Like, this is sad. Like, this is not helping them. True confidence comes from realizing what we're capable of, realizing what all we can do. I think we as entrepreneurs get this because we all start at 0 where we have to figure everything out. We're like sitting there with YouTube trying to figure out how to, code in the snippet or whatever it is, build out the workflow, right? Because we can't afford to hire someone yet. So we all went through that. And that confidence that we got when like you had the moment where you wanted to throw the computer screen, you were so done and so frustrated. And I have spent so many hours and then you got through to the other side. And yet we rob our kids of that because we want them to stay comfortable. And we don't understand that this short-term comfort could lead to a lifetime of discomfort, of pain, of insecurity because they don't have that confidence. And the bonus is this is how we're able to be it all and not do it all. You delegate to your children.
Yes. Yeah. Love that. That's so great. I would, in a perfect world, we would end on that, but there's a couple more things I want to mention here because I think they're important, right? And one is that I taught at the college level for about 10 years, and the two or like three things that really stick out in my mind are like there were multiple students who were like, "Oh yeah, my mom helps me with my homework." I'm like, "You are 19 years old.
Yeah.
Stop that." And then there were two times where parents called me, and like one was like, "I'm wondering why my son failed your class." And I'm like, "I'm wondering who your son is because he never came to class." Right. And then he was like floored by that. And there was another who was like, a mother called asking if I would give her son extra credit. And I'm like, "Do you understand that your son is a full blown adult?
Yeah.
Like if he wants something, he can come to me."
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
and
is
like
so
to his
true.
credit, he was mortified, right? He was like, "I'm so
Good.
sorry my mom called you."
And you know, like I get where it comes from. I fully get, like, I think this is such an important conversation we all need to be having. If anyone hasn't read Anxious Generation, like they should go out and read that because that
Like Jonathan
Height or Hate. Yes.
Height,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
something like that.
So
it's on my Kindle. I need to read it. Yeah.
You need to. It is mind blowing, especially at the age your kids are at. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Because I read it and my kids were so much older and I got a lot of it right, which I was like, oh, phew. But there were so many things that I'm like, dang it. Because I know I stepped in too many times. I smoothed the road too many times. I was like, I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want, right? And anyways, it's so good. But this idea, I had a Stanford professor on my podcast a while back, and he said the same thing, that he has had parents call. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, how? Yeah. Like, this is just mind blowing to me. And I think, I don't want to be too hard on the parent because we've all done this. Every single one of us has stepped in when we shouldn't have. But, that parent who's like, I want to understand why my child failed. And it's like, I think you actually already answered it. The fact that you're calling and asking is probably the problem, right? We've got to let our kids do hard things. And that means we're going to watch them fail a little bit. So we want to do that when the stakes are a lot smaller. We want to do it when they're young, when it's like, junior high, elementary school. It's not going on to a college transcript yet. If they fail, it genuinely does not matter. It won't, okay? Like I promise, it's fine, right? So we need to try to do these things when they're younger, so that as they're getting into the ninth grade on, and it is going to count, that they've learned how to check for themselves. So I teach an early morning religion class. I volunteer teach, and it's to get a seminary degree for high school students. So I teach it from ninth grade to 12th grade, and I teach the juniors and seniors. And one of the questions, so in order for them to apply to the university, so Brigham Young University, they have to get an endorsement from me as their seminary teacher with their application to Brigham Young University. And one of the questions specifically is, do they resolve problems without parent help? That is literally one of the questions that I answer. And so, just thinking about that and realizing like we need to set our kids up to be able to do this. And, there's parents who are like, I can't even get my child to like go into the store by themselves to like pick up the phone. I get that, right? Like I very much understand that. So we're going to start small. And I feel like we could go on a whole nother tangent on this, but like, yes.
No, this is already going to be a 2-part episode.
But I'll say Anxious Generation, like read that book because it is mind blowing and it will help so much with like these thoughts and like, okay, what does this actually look like? And where do we go from here when we're realizing, yeah, I am smoothing the path too much. Like they are dealing with a lot of anxiety and fear and we want them to be confident, right? Like we want them to feel like they can do hard things, that they can pick themselves up, that they can be resilient. And so, how do we help them do that?
Oh, that's so good. This dovetails perfectly with what I was going to say about, because my wife and I talk about this all the time. Then we'll wrap up, I promise. Because she's like, how did our parents do it? Right? Like I had 3 younger brothers and I'm like, well, because in the 90s, you didn't have to care about kids as much as we have to care about now. And like it's great because they're learning that like it's okay that dad cries. I'm an emotional Italian. I cry a lot. But like it also puts a lot of pressure on us, and we overcorrect, and some people do coddle, right? There was like a whole generation of people who wanted to be their kids' friends, and I
Yes.
already told them, I'm like, I am not your friend.
Yeah.
I am the person who makes sure you don't turn into an idiot when you're an adult.
Right, right. 100%. This is, I love that you're saying this, and this is so true. So anxious generation, one of the things that's it talks about, I think it was an anxious generation. Anyways, it's like, what is the time in your childhood that was like this moment? It was like your favorite experience. And they were saying how whenever they ask this, it usually comes back to, almost always, this thing that you got to do by yourself where you felt really grown up. Like maybe you got to ride your bike to the little store and get candy or right, like something like that. So me, I lived in downtown Seattle on a boat, and we could take the trolley and it's on my own podcast. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. It is on my own podcast. Okay, anyways, I'm remembering now. Now I'm trying to remember what interview it was. I'm like having this moment where I'm like, what interview was that? Okay, anyways. So mine was I'm on this trolley, and I would get to go down to Pike Place Market with my sister and our two best friends. Like I felt so cool, so grown up. Okay, our generation of raising kids, we feel like we are, to be very honest, really bad parents if we let them do things by themselves, right? Like we monitor them at the playground, we organize the play dates, we call and schedule it for them. I mean, all you have to do is think about, like, remember how you used to have to pick up the phone and see if, your friend Johnny was available, and maybe dad answered the phone and he was kind of scary and you're like, oh, crud, right? Like we do all of these things for them, and it's not the answer, right? Like it's not the answer. So this idea of letting them do these hard things, letting them learn for themselves, it makes all the difference. Okay, the interview. The one I am referring to is Dr. Camilo Ortiz. It's episode 121 on my podcast. So if you go to 121.balancingbusypodcast.com, that's the episode. It's called Why Overparenting is Creating Anxiety and What to Do Instead with Dr. Camilo Ortiz. Okay, that's hilarious. It was my own.
That's fantastic. And a great reminder that you can get all of the show notes, everything we talk about, even though this will be a two-parter. All of the show notes will be at streamlined.fm/460. Leah, I could literally keep talking to you for like 2 more hours.
I know.
But, we have stuff to do.
We
so
do. It's true.
Thank you so much for sharing insight on finding balance and parenting. Where can people find you?
We already know they have great taste in podcasts. So I'm going to say you're already on your podcast platform right now. The first thing you can do is just go search Balancing Busy, find my podcast and follow it. And then, do a little search, look for a couple episodes you're interested in, download them so that they'll be in your queue when you're on your next walk or on a drive. If you're interested in this parenting conversation, that episode truly, I think, is my favorite interview I've ever done. So that was 121.balancingbusypodcast.com. You can go to balancingbusy.com as my website. I've got tons of free resources, everything from my top 10 favorite tips for time management, especially like as working entrepreneurial parents, and all kinds of resources there. So that's what I would suggest.
Fantastic. Well, Leah Remillet, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to thank Leah again for spending extra time. I think we spent about 2 hours on the recording, and she was just so generous with her time and her knowledge. And I would strongly encourage you to check out her podcast. Everything that we talked about, all of the links, all of the shows, all of the gear and things like that, the books will be linked in the show notes. There's going to be one page for both parts of this episode over at streamlined.fm/460. Of course, you could probably also find it in the description wherever you're listening to this as well. But thank you so much for listening. And until next time, I'll see you out there.